Inshallah and Ashe, blessings to you, my energetic beings, and welcome to Meet Me for Coffee. I have a guest, Joseph Holmes, sharing insight into the power of angels. So he's going to share today his true sensational journey of an Irish American's mystic survival and road to recovery from childhood, sexual, physical, emotional trauma, homelessness, cancer, and war-related PTSD by the grace of his guardian angels. So he's a mindset juggernaut, a spiritual warrior, a best-selling author, a mystic, an entrepreneur, an international speaker, also a philanthropist, and altogether an inspirational beacon of hope and transformation. He assists people to come out of what he has coined as their angel closets, which I love that, and discovering their gift, the gift they were born to give the world, and sharing that gift, their light, along with how to deal fearlessly with the inevitable doubts and fears that end up holding most people actually back in what I call those thread lines from creating a life of meaning, significance, joy, love, and success. So with all of that, welcome, Joseph. I'm super excited to hear about the power of the angelic beings. I love them myself.
Thank you, Tonya. Great to be here.
I'm happy to have you. And I love loving yourself wealth. I like that as well.
Yeah, a lot of people misinterpret that. They think it's only monetary wealth, but living yourself wealthy means in all aspects, not just financial, but emotionally, physically, everything. It encompasses the whole part of you.
So when did you first become aware of the angelic beings?
Well, unconsciously, I became aware of them when I was 7 years old. Every summer, my family, my two brothers and my parents and I would travel to the Phoenix area in Arizona to visit my relatives. And on the way home, we'd always make a side trip. And this particular summer, my parents decided to stop in Nogales, Arizona. And that becomes very significant later in my life when I start having doubts and fears. But at the time I was 7 years old, we got into Nogales. It's a border town. We got into Nogales late in the evening, so we all just went to bed. And the next morning when I woke up, everybody was up, getting ready to go to breakfast. And I was lying on my back, and this wave of peace entered the crown of my head, swept through my body and out the soles of my feet. I had no idea what it was. I just knew it felt good, so I wasn't afraid, but I didn't mention it to anybody. Anyway, I got up. We were walking to breakfast, waiting at on the curb to cross the street when it happened again to me. At the time, I was 7 years old. I just thought, well, I don't know what it is, but it feels good. So it never made me afraid, but of course, I never forgot it. And later, when I was going through some doubts and fears, Mary Magdalene told me that was her. That was the grace of Mary Magdalene flowing through me. And she just didn't want me to take her word for it. She actually provided a proof that it was. And we can get into that later if you want to get into the doubts and fears. But the thing about Nogales, Arizona, to me as a 7-year-old, it was cool because right across the border was the town Nogales, Mexico. So both towns had the same name. That was cool to me. That becomes very significant later on. So, but that's the first time I was unaware. I knew something was going on, but the first time I was consciously aware of the angels in my life, I was taking a 1-week workshop, breath work, and started on Sunday. On Wednesday, we were doing the breath work. And I remember, we're in a dark room, about 12 of us lying on our backs, just breathing. And during the course of the breathing, I saw these pair of eyes above me. And all I could see were the eyes. So I thought they were my mom's eyes. She had passed on a few years earlier. but I couldn't tell for sure. But anyway, when the facilitator announced that he was going to turn on the lights in 10 minutes, the eyes expanded, and it was Mother Mary. And for those 10 minutes, she just beamed me with beams of gold and white light. So that was the first time I was consciously aware that my angels were with me. So I have lots of stories. So Hannah, we only have a little bit of time.
So do you find they're always with you in the continuum of life? You just kind of weren't sure at 7. I think 7's kind of a magical number myself. Yes. That's when I had my near-death experience and I was in a coma. Wow. So it's easier for me to go otherworldly just because I've been there. Who do you recognize them with you every day, every moment?
Well, in December, on my birthday, December 13th, which happens to be the feast day of Santa Lucia, the patron saint of authors, and the Lady of Light. On my birthday in 2012, Mary Magdalene awakened me, had me sit down at my desk with a pad and a pen, and she began dictating her quatrain poetry, 4 stanza poetry. And she's been doing that every morning since December of 2012. So I am with her consciously every morning. And then she'll announce to me, for example, I was going out to the mission San Luis Rey, one of the 21 California missions. And she said, well, Mother Mary's going to be with you tomorrow when you go. And so she does things like that. And so it's not so much Mother Mary, but Mary Magdalene. And Mary Magdalene, I call Maggie. So people don't get confused. When I say Maggie, I'm talking about Mary Magdalene. When I say Mary, I'm talking about Mother Mary. And originally we were calling the love notes from Maggie, because in 2012, when she started dictating these to me, I asked her, I said, do you mind if I call you Maggie? I said, I know Maggie's not a nickname for Magdalena, but next to Melissa, it's one of my favorite names. And she said, of course you can call me Maggie. Well, this becomes significant because this was in December. And because I want to, emphasize to your listeners, when you start following your heart, the doubts and fears come up. And that's what stops most people in their tracks. So this is important because, so this was December. In April, so just a few months later, I started having serious doubts. I thought, oh, come on, these cannot be coming from here. People are going to think I'm nuts, And anyway, I gave her an ultimatum. I said, one morning in April, I said, I want proof. I want irrefutable proof, not like a hazy photograph of a UFO, I want proof. I want a burning bush that these are really coming from you. And, a day went by and she kept coming with the poetry, but just ignored my ultimatum. So every morning the poems kept coming. And then in July that same year, so just a few months later, she said, I want you to publish these. So this is how your angels set you up, see, when you start having doubts and fears. So I'm thinking, okay, if I'm going to publish these, maybe I should get some independent reviews on them. So I went to this website, and it has thousands of people that offer different services. And so, I wasn't about to go through everybody's bio. So I'm very visual. So I just started going quickly through the pictures of people. And I landed on this photo of this woman. Her name was Angelina. And she was a model, and she did some modeling stuff. But Maggie told me, send her an email. So I sent her an email, and all I told her, Tonya, all I said was, I have some poetry. I'll pay you for your time to read them. If you feel like giving me a review, fine, good or bad, that's fine, but you don't have to, but I'll pay you for your time. And she wrote back and she said, well, no, that's not what I do. So I was ready to go. And Maggie said, no, you stay with her. So we went back and forth 2 or 3 days. And finally, out of exasperation, Angelina sends me an email. She says, okay, fine, send me the poems. So this time when I send her the poems, I tell her about Mary Magdalene, me calling her Maggie, and that we're calling the poems Love Notes from Maggie. Well, the next day I get an email back, and she's in Thailand at the time when we're doing this. And she writes back and she says, Joseph, I have to tell you this. Said, you are not going to believe me, so I'll send you proof. When I was growing up in Greece, everybody today knows me as Angelina because that's the name my father wanted to call me. But when I was born, my mother wanted to name me Mary Magdalene and then her last name. I said, so my legal name is Maria Magdalena. And when I was growing up in Greece, one day, one of my very best friends called me Maggie. And I loved it. And so all my friends called me Maggie. And so when I read that, I remember reading that and then looking back over to the side to her name, Angelina, Angel, Ina. And I thought, oh my God, this is out of the thousands of people I could have picked, and then I asked her, I said, now wait, because I wanted to make sure. I said, is Maggie a nickname for Magdalena? She said, no, but just one day my friend called me Maggie and I loved it. So then the next morning, I only get one poem from Mary Magdalene. Now, usually I'm getting anywhere from 5 to 65 poems in a sitting, right? But the next morning I get one poem from Mary Magdalene. She says, Joseph, when things like this happen, it is magical and fun. Angelina to Magdalena to Maggie. Who would have thought? And from across the sea. And we even look alike. So run, my dear, and jump and sing, that when you look at her, you are seeing me. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, that gives me chills. I love it.
Yeah, but anyway, that was my burning bush.
Ah.
Yeah, I mean, I still get chills when I tell the story. And but then you would, for the benefit of your listeners, you would think after a burning bush like that, I'd have no more doubts, right? But that's not how the ego works. The ego is always there to keep you out of your heart and in your head where all your doubts and fears thrive. So, maybe a year later, the doubts started creeping in. Now, whenever I get doubts, she just nips them in the bud. I don't have to give her an ultimatum or anything. But this time, doubts were coming in. And then one morning after she dictated her poem, she said, look up Carlos Castaneda. And I'm thinking, for your listeners who don't know, Carlos Castaneda was he's an anthropologist, but he was at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, writing his doctoral thesis. And he would go out to the Arizona desert, and he found a mentor who was a Yaqui shaman. And he wrote these books, The Teachings of Don Juan, and all these books. They became international bestsellers. He's very well known. And so I already knew a lot about him because I have a degree in anthropology too. Around the same time his books came out in the 60s. Anyway, she says, and the big controversy with Carlos was his detractors claimed that his protagonist, Don Juan, was fictional. That Carlos made all these stories up, and Carlos would say, "No, I first met Don Juan at the bus station in Nogales, Arizona. I knew all this stuff." So when Maggie asked me to look up Carlos Castaneda, just out of the blue, I'm thinking, I already know about Carlos. She said, just look him up. So I Googled him, and I'm reading all this stuff I already know about him. And then on the sidebar, there's a title that says, I can confirm Carlos Castaneda's meeting with Don Juan at the Nogales bus station. I thought, well, okay, that's where the controversy is. So I clicked on that, and it's the story about a guy who knew Carlos. He was traveling in Mexico. He was coming up to cross the border at Nogales, and he got sick. So instead of crossing over, he stayed in a suburb of Nogales to recuperate, Nogales, Mexico, to recuperate. Now, that's important because if he had went ahead and gone across, he would have missed that meeting. But because he stayed back and recuperated, when he did cross over, he was at the Nogales Greyhound station in Arizona, and he saw Don Juan chatting with Carlos. Well, the name of the suburb that he recuperated in was Magdalena. I had to look it up. I said, Magdalena, are you sure? So I looked it up. Yep, it's a suburb in Nogales, Mexico. So Maggie told me when I was 7 years old, that was the grace of Mary Magdalene flowing through me. But you see, that's what your angels do. They create these circumstances in your life, so later on, they know you're going to have these doubts and fears. So then they can come back, remember that? Remember that? Well, that was me, right? So, but you have to be open to all that. You know, you have to stay open. Because one day a host out of the blue, nobody had ever asked me this they asked me, why you? Why did Mary Magdalene choose you? And, I didn't even think about it. Just out of my mouth came, well, I don't think she chose me. I was just receptive, right? And, if you're receptive, you'll hear your angels. Right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
I think being receptive, being open. Right? Now people say, well, yeah, but how do you know it's not the devil or something like that, right? I said, look, the devil is just another name for ego, ego, edging God out, right? The job of your ego is to keep you out of your heart. And how do you tell if what you hear is coming from your heart, your angels, your intuition, or coming from your ego? And it takes practice. You make mistakes in the beginning, right? But what I've come to understand is that if it's coming from your heart, it's love infused. And if it's coming from your ego, it's not love infused. It's, anger or jealousy or envy, And of course, ego can mask that as love. So again, it just takes practice. You got to get in there, start listening, start being receptive, and then you're going to figure it out. Oh yeah, that's my heart. No, that's my ego.
Yeah, different states of conscious awareness. Really, it all goes back to your heart center and your love center.
Right.
So when did you recognize that walking away from the walks of a man-made life to create a greater life, when did you recognize that? It kind of sounds like it was also kind of your own dark night of the soul.
Well, in my early life, up until my mid-20s, I pretty much followed my heart. I trusted my heart. And then when I got into college and university, I started looking, I transferred my power to other people, people of quote unquote authority that knew more than I did, right? And I gave up that power. And so when I went into my own business, I didn't know anything about business. So I looked at these people for guidance, and they said, "Well, do this and do that, and you'll be successful like I am." And I would do things that were ethical, but just not me. I'm more of an introvert, and so I would just spin my wheels and spin my wheels, and what's wrong with me? This guy did it; he's successful. Why can't I do it and be successful? And for 8 years, I just became I became very depressed. I had a young family to take care of. And, I wasn't fulfilling those obligations the way I thought I should. And so after 8 years of that, I just had a complete PTSD infused meltdown, nervous breakdown. And we have a 5-acre homestead here. So I walked away from my business, and all I could do was just work the soil for a year or 2 years. That was my therapy. Right? And then that was, and interestingly, that was in 1991. In 1988, I had my first real conscious spiritual experience when I went to visit a friend, John Lawrence, Reverend John Lawrence, and he was in his 90s at the time. And I went to visit him on a Sunday, first time I had visited him, and he wanted to meditate. And so we sat down across from each other with a coffee table in between us, and we began meditating. And during the meditation, his foot kicked the leg of the coffee table. And he was in his 90s, so I wanted to make sure he was okay, but I didn't want to interrupt the meditation. So I just kind of just opened my eyes just a little bit. And he was like he had seen a ghost. His eyes were like wide open, and he was looking above my head. And I thought, well, okay, he's okay, so I'll just continue meditating. So I just closed my eyes. Well, when it was time for me to leave, he excused himself and he came back, and he gave me this. And it's a crucifix. He said, I want to give you this. He said, this is what I saw hovering above your head. And I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, but so at the time, I didn't quite know what to make of it, but it's a beautiful present. So I thanked him. I went up to my car, and how you get in your car and you close the door like normal people do. That's what I did. But when I closed the door, there was this bam, and the whole vehicle was encased in a bubble white light. And Tonya, I cannot tell you how I got home. I don't remember that, but I know it felt like the vehicle was 3 feet off the ground. But when I did get home, my wife had lunch ready for me, and I sat down to eat. I took a forkful of food and I brought it to my mouth. I could only get it to about 12 inches to my mouth. The vibration of the bubble was so refined compared to the food's vibration. It couldn't penetrate the bubble. So for a week, all I could do was take freshly made juices. I couldn't even take store-bought juices. They had to be freshly made, and I could only take them like there was this hole in the bubble. I could only take it through a straw, through the corner of my mouth. That's what I lived on for a week. And then gradually during that week, that the white light dissipated, and then it was gone. And I say interestingly, because that was 1988, 3 years later, I have this nervous breakdown. And I think it was a way to prepare me for that nervous breakdown. And not go off the deep end.
So I feel like right now a lot of people are walking away from the authority of man. What I tell people I subscribe to the channel of God or the universe, not the subscription channel to man. It's kind of like spiritual or otherworldly kind of a messages from creator, source, angels. So it's kind of what I call like we're in this middle of this spiritual awakening, kind of, it's got a variety of different names, but it sounds like later on that you had this angelic intervention later in time and space. That's kind of, you actually did have an intervention, an angelic intervention, it sounds like, right?
Well, I tell people, your angels are always speaking to you. And they were speaking to me for those 8 years, and I refused to listen. For 8 years, they gently suggested, maybe you should go this way, take this road, and I kept rationalizing, well, all this education, my student loans, my family, and I rationalized that, no, I have this. And then what happens, your angels are very patient, but they have a limit. And not that they have a limit, but they see you where you have to make that change. And if you don't make it, then they come down with a sledgehammer. And that's what they did in 1991 with that nervous breakdown. And then, but with that nervous breakdown, I don't think Mary Magdalene probably would have come to me. And that wasn't the first time she came to me in December of 2012. What actually happened was around, I think, 1993 or 4, I took this workshop and I went into these, what I call these light regions. The Catholics, I talked to a Catholic one time, he said, yeah, you were in a state of rapture. I was in a state of rapture for a solid 5 months. I couldn't work. I was just in this rapture. I mean, I go into a supermarket and just out of nowhere, no warning, just I started giggling and laughing. And people would stop and look at me, but I had no control over it. Just this state of rapture. And that was for 5 months. I came out of that. And then a few years later, I was going to take another workshop at the Mission San Luis Rey, because that mission is associated with Mother Mary. And I thought maybe I could have another vision of Mother Mary. And so I was closing up. I announced to my class that there would be no classes tomorrow, Saturday, because I was going to a workshop. That's all I said. So when I was locking up, one of the parents came up and said, well, why are you taking the workshop? And it just, without thinking, out of my mouth came, oh, to meet Mary Magdalene. So I remember I'm driving home and I'm thinking, Mary Magdalene, I don't have any interest in her. I'm taking this workshop. Hopefully they have another vision of Mary, Mother Mary. So anyway, the next morning at 8 a.m., the facilitator said, we're going to do some deep breathing. We're going to do it in chairs. And so we're sitting in chairs, the lights are on. We start this deep breathing. And then they had this doorway without doors, this double doorway without any doors. And around the corner of the doorway, Mother Mary sticks her head out and she comes up in front of me, and she's got Mary Magdalene with her. And they're wearing these black capes. I had no idea why they were wearing black capes, but later on, when I was having doubts and fears, she told me why. But they start circling me and wrapping me with these black capes and giggling and laughing. They're just, having fun with me. And then Mary says, I want you to lie down on the floor. And I'm thinking, I can't lie on the floor. Everyone's in the chairs. And then right then the facilitator said, everybody to the floor. So I'm lying on the floor. I got my head in Mary's lap, and Mary Magdalene is hovering above me. And she enters my body. She heals me of my childhood molestations. And she comes out of my body. And then they're gone. And then, so every once in a while, from that time till 2012, Mary Magdalene would come to me, but it wasn't until December of 2012 that she started the poetry. And so the first part of the book, The Power of Angels, the first part of the book are my angel stories, because I think it's important that people either begin to recognize, reflect back, and think of their angelic interventions, or at least believe in them. And because that sets up discovering what your gift is, why you came to Earth. And once you know what that is, then you can start sharing it and then dealing with the doubts and fears. So sharing it and dealing with the doubts and fears and discovering what it is the second part of the book, which contains all of Maggie's poetry. So
talk about love notes to your soul. I mean, the title alone is totally magical, and I think we should all be writing love notes to our soul.
Right. Well, love notes were originally calling Maggie's poetry Love Notes for Maggie, but then Maggie suggested that we change that, and I think she only did that so when I was having doubts and fears, I would meet Angelina and Mary Magdalene, who was also called Maggie, right? So after that, she said, let's call these love notes for your soul. So that's why we changed the name. And they're love notes for your soul, because people say, well, how do I know what my gift is? And, everything in nature is simple. And I like Steve Harvey, the comedian. He likes to take simple scripture, and simple scripture says, "You have not because you ask not." It doesn't say you have not because of your PTSD. It doesn't say you have not because of your past lives or because you're flawed, right? All that stuff's complicated. It simply says you have not because you ask not. So what's that mean? It means to simply ask. Ask one time and know that God has taken it from there. You don't have to ask 100 times every day. But what you can do is take all your requests and form those into affirmations and repeat your affirmations to yourself every day, because those are designed to keep you out of your head, where your doubts and fears thrive, and keep you in your heart, where your imagination thrives, where only love is real, and through which your angels and your intuition converse with you. So you can say those as much as you want, but just ask. And when you ask, it's not like asking like God's out there, right? You're asking within. Every cell in your body was created and is sustained by source energy, right? By God, whatever term you want to use. So when you ask within, what's my gift, right? What's my purpose? You're asking the very source that created and sustains you. Right? But so what I do is I just center the asking in my heart, right? And then wait for the answer. Steve Harvey makes it simple. He says, well, your gift is whatever you do the best, whatever you're best at, and you do it with the least amount of effort. Okay, well, so that's your gift, all right? Simple scripture says your gift will make room for you and bring you into the company of extraordinary souls. It doesn't say your passion will make room for you. It doesn't say your education will make room for you. It doesn't say that late night success course on a late night infomercial will make room for you. That's all complicated. It just says your gift will make room for you. So once you know what your gift is, then that's your key to success. It's knowing what your gift is and then sharing it with the world fearlessly. Every morning I get up and I give thanks for my daily bread. Right? I give thanks for my daily bread, and I take the pieces that are gifted me and I arrange those pieces in such a way that I live fearlessly, knowing that God is taking care of the details. The details are none of my business. How to do it is none of my business. All I do, my job, is to get up, give thanks for my daily bread, and then arrange the pieces gifted me in such a way that I live fearlessly. Right? That I share my gift with the world fearlessly. Right? And everything else will be taken care of.
Yeah, handing it over to the altar in the other dimension is kind of how I see that.
And, your angels are simply messengers of God, right? So you can hand it over directly to God, or you can hand it to your angels. It doesn't matter. Whatever resonates with you, because we're all so individual, we're all so unique. That's why you can't, you can listen to other people and get inspired, but you shouldn't be listening to other people and trying to copy them. You can be inspired by them, but you still have to go back and ask within, what's my next move? What should I do? Where should I go? Who should I talk to? Just ask and then wait for the answers. And then trust in yourself, because when you trust in yourself, you're trusting in the source that created and sustains you. But that takes practice, and because we're new at it, we stumble a lot. We make mistakes, we make blunders that we considered mistakes and blunders. But, God keeps forgiving us. So our job is, every time we stumble, it's just because God has forgiven us, just to get back up and move forward. Just keep moving forward. Because every step that I take, I know God has taken a multitude of steps. I don't see them, right? But I know they're being taken. My job is to take my baby steps, and keep taking them, and keep asking, what should I do? And if people don't want to believe in angels, just listen to your intuition. Call it intuition. I call it angels. Right? But someone's an atheist, they can listen to their intuition. Right? It's the same thing.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to share with my audience?
Well, if somebody, sharing your angel stories can be scary, because I believe there's billions of people on the planet with their own personal angel stories, but they're intimidated. I think they're going to be labeled, So people can share them with me if that helps. I'll keep them confidential, but they can reach me at joseph@jmmlove.com. J for Joseph, MM for Mary Magdalene. Love, that's Maggie's message that only love is real. So joseph@jmmlove.com. And if that's a safe way for them to begin sharing their angel stories, feel free to do so. But I think that's imperative. That's the trinity of creating a life full of meaning, significance, joy, love, and success, right? Coming out of your angel closet, sharing your angel stories, or at least believing in them. And then the other part of the triangle is discovering your gift. And then the third part of the triangle is sharing your gift and dealing with the doubts and fears.
Absolutely.
And if anybody's interested in my book, you can go to Amazon, and you have to put in The Power of Angels, Volume 3. If you just put in The Power of Angels, all kinds of angel books come up. So The Power of Angels, Volume 3, and my book will come right up. On the back of it is a picture of Angelina. Right?
I love it.
Beautiful soul.
Well, thanks so much for tuning in today. And Angelic, otherworldly blessings. I will have all the juice in the show notes, and hopefully not Sir Didymus barking in the background, but for you to connect with Joseph, his books and offerings. I'll have all of the juice, like I said, in the show notes, and make it a magical, blessed day. Inshallah and Ashe. Angel blessings. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.